All right, so I watched a couple of Skylar fiction, a series of Skylar fiction drama / debates over the last couple of days. And, keep in mind, take this with a grain of salt, because it looks to me like Skylar fiction has entered into the Paul Vanderklay school of running a YouTube channel where he just puts out way more content than I can possibly deal with in any given time or setting. I mean, it's cool. It's a pretty interesting channel, actually. He's got a series on the book of Job, which I think he's got 3 hours of videos on, that I want to watch and actually really dig into, because I think that'll be pretty interesting. It's a cool channel. It's definitely worth your time, but he puts out a lot more content than I can possibly manage to get to at any given week. So what I'm going to give you my analysis of a little Twitter feud and a little bit of a debate, and take it with a grain of salt. I didn't have time to listen to very much more than an hour of what I'm about to tell you about. There's a real world out there, and I got priorities. Much as I would love to just put aside like 3 hours and listen to a whole YouTube debate, and read the whole Twitter feud, and then listen to a whole nother YouTube debate, it's just life doesn't work like that. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm just giving you my 2 cents as it stands. Now, the first thing I started digging into, he was in a little bit of a Twitter feud with Story of the Cosmos. Story of the Cosmos I know pretty well. I've been in streams with him. I like him. He's a nice guy. It was really hard for me to understand what the genesis of the feud was. So I'm just going to take it from where I came into the conflict. By the time I had seen the feud, it had already degenerated into the nanny nanny poo poo stage. The nanny nanny poo poo stage is kind of like, it's what happens in conflicts. And it's really hard. That's why I never jump into Twitter feuds. By the way, if you've ever noticed that, I'll never take sides in a Twitter feud. Why? Because by the time you see the feud and it's interesting to you to watch, you have no idea what transpired that led up to it. And when it's in the nanny nanny poo poo stage, you can't go, okay, that guy's right, that guy's, because you just degenerate into like name call. You can't use my photo. Yeah, yes, I can. Oh wow, you're not even going to let me use my photo. It degenerates. And to be fair to Story of the Cosmos, I'm pretty sure by the time he started telling Skylar he's not allowed to use his photo, which on the surface seems a little bit petty, he probably felt cornered by the series of things that happened beforehand. I doubt that just appeared out of nowhere. And lo and behold, I go and dig into the debates, and from what I can gather, he felt cornered by Skylar's tactic in the debate. So that's what I'm going to actually try to address. Now, the question that it seemed like, again, take this with a grain of salt. This is just my first impression. I'm going to try to be fair to both sides. The question that it seemed like Tyler was trying to get an answer to is a perfectly legitimate question to pose to a Christian apologist in a debate. It's a perfectly legitimate question. He was asking something along the lines, or I'm not sure if this is the exact genesis of this particular conflict, but I've seen him ask this question before, and it's a perfectly legitimate question. What about the 6-year-old 6-year-old Hindu child, who's never heard the gospel? He gets hit by a car. Does he go to hell? Now, to Skylar, that seems really unfair. And he deals with a lot of Christians in debates who have actually answered him like, somewhere along the lines of, yeah, screw him, he's a sinner. Of course he does. What? That's not fair. What? Screw him. He's a Hindu, you said. That means sinner. Throw him on the flame. Nobody cares. So I swear to God, he's had answers along those lines. Maybe not quite that cold-blooded, but that cold-blooded in terms of, yeah, whatever. Of course he does. Bible says so. No, that's not a perfectly legitimate answer. So when he hears an answer that he thinks is suspiciously close to that, okay, and I've heard him defend this tactic and this way, and I don't necessarily endorse it, but I get it. When he hears an answer that he thinks suspiciously close to that, that's when he presses it and tries to literally corner the person. Not necessarily to just win the debate, but to show them how awful that actually is. Now, again, trying to be fair to both sides. There's a problem and it's not, I'm not necessarily sure that Skylar does this, but a lot of anti-theists do it. And I call it the everything but the kitchen sink school of counter-apologetics, wherein You lay down the most challenging question you can think of to the biblical text. Say, defend this particular passage in the Bible, defend this particular action by God. And then somebody gives you a really good answer. You say, here, jump through this intellectual hoop. Some of these questions that are in the Bible, keep in mind, people have been debating for 500 years or more and don't necessarily have clear-cut answers. They're imponderables, not necessarily, I mean, they're great if you want to just win a debate, but if you want to actually get at the truth of what's trying to be revealed in the scriptures, and do something more than just win a debate. So they're kind of easy to corner your opponent with. If you're just trying to corner your opponent and you're applauding yourself for doing it, don't. It's a Pyrrhic victory. It's irrelevant. Because this is what happened in the comment section. Skylar isn't necessarily doing that. I'm not accusing Skylar of that. But this is what happened in the comment section. Stephen Sheen, I think that's his name, is one of the smarter apologists, floats around on Twitter. I don't even know if he's an apologist. Smarter Christians floats around on Twitter and every once in a while comments on things. He's one of the smarter people around here. Answers it really well. Answers it, as far as I'm concerned, in a way that's really satisfying. He says, we don't know. The Bible was written for adults and it doesn't specifically address this question. Now that's a perfectly legitimate answer. And somebody used, an anti-theist in the comments uses that as, okay, now go for this. And that's where it starts becoming problematic. It's the everything but the kitchen sink school of counter-apologetics. Here's the most challenging question I can think of the Bible and the scriptures. Jump through this intellectual hoop. Then you do it in a way that's satisfying. Okay, now here's this one. Okay, now jump through this one. Just to corner your opponent. It's not necessarily fair or reasonable. Some of these questions are really challenging and can't be easily answered. And if you are doing it just to corner somebody, that is not a tactic that you should be proud of. Now, I am not saying Skylar does it. Sometimes he does it to corner someone, like he'll justify it in terms of cornering Matt Slick, because Matt Slick takes an approach that is really, or maybe not Matt Slick, but there is a version of the hard Calvinist interpretation of this, wherein the answer actually is yes. God preordained that person to die at age 5 and go to hell. Now, I mean, the reason why somebody would have a real question with that is pretty obvious. That just doesn't seem fair. So, why somebody would have a real question with that, I get. Now, moving right along to the next debate. And there's a reason why I bring up both debates, because, then he's in a debate with converse contender. Not along the same subject, but kind of start getting into this. Did the Amalekites, God's treatment of the Amalekites. Again, very contested ground in these let's debate the Bible debates. Did God command, what did God was handling of the Amalekites was immoral, was terrible. Why I bring this up? Now, this debate got really confusing. I was trying to listen to this while I was doing other things, and it was really hard to follow along because they started adopting different roles. Like, what on earth? Converse contender goes, okay, let me play atheist for a bit. And then it got really confusing. I couldn't figure out what they were talking about after time. Honestly, I couldn't follow at all. My head started feeling like ants were crawling through it. And I was just like, this debate is driving me insane. But at one part of the debate, Dr. Josh, of all people, they go to Dr. Josh. How would you answer this if you were an apologist? And he goes, here's what I would have said if I were back when I was a Christian apologist. And he says something along the lines of, we can't know everything that's in the Bible, and sometimes it seems like God is being unjust in the Bible, but we know in our hearts that God is good and God is just, and we have to trust him and have faith. And we know that God is just, and if it looks like he's doing something unjust in the Bible, we just don't fully understand the context. I'm like, what's the matter with that? That's a perfectly legitimate answer. Something along those lines. It's not exactly what he said, but he gave an answer that I was perfectly satisfied with. I'm like, what on earth is wrong with that? What on earth is wrong with that? Here's the thing, and I'll say this first to the Christians. We don't have to answer. If somebody says to me, here, explain why God wrote X in the Bible, okay? I don't need to answer that. Why? Because I didn't write the Bible. Hello? I didn't write it. I don't know why it says that. Why did God allow X in the Bible? I don't know. I don't know, is a perfectly legitimate answer. Now, it might not be an answer that you can do in a debate, sure. But if the debate is just being played to, score points against the Christian, corner the Christian, you don't need to win that debate. It's a Pyrrhic victory at best. It's a really easy thing to do. Some of the biblical questions are better and more challenging than others, and some of them are really challenging. So if somebody's goal is just to, corner you, it doesn't really matter. It's not a real victory. These are questions, thank God I didn't know any of these bogus questions the first time I went into a church and became a Christian. That's why I don't really care about these questions. They're academic questions. Some of them have legitimate answers, some of them might not. The idea that this creates all this cognitive dissonance in a human being is totally fallacious. No, it doesn't. My wife is a practicing Christian in good standing, really, really committed Christian. She doesn't even know that there's a debate over the Amalekites. She could care less. She could care less. Now, some of the questions are perfectly valid theological questions, but they aren't necessarily valid for theological questions that we now debate over where you can win a debate and lose a debate. Silly. It's silly. It's really easy to to corner someone with these type of things. Really easy thing to do. It's not something that you should be applauding yourself for doing. Why? Because it doesn't take any skill. It's basically irrelevant, and they're totally irrelevant to the proposition God exists or God does not exist. That's the key. Thank God I didn't know any of these bogus questions the first time I walked into a church. As far as I'm concerned, I encountered God that night. I can't even imagine how pointless it would have been if well, tell me about what happened with the Amalekites. It would have been absolutely ridiculous. Most of these questions are academic and borderline meaningless. If you're a Christian apologist and you want to defend the Bible, go for it if you've got good answers. But if you don't have good answers, walk away. Don't just get beat up. It looked like Converse Contender had some pretty good answers. Hard to tell. It's hard to tell. It was really hard to tell. And Christians, how I heard about that debate, Christians were telling me that he won. And then I went and watched some of the debate, and then I read the comments if you think he won, Christians, because the comments don't think he won. When a Christian wins a debate, okay, it's clear cut. You can tell, read the comments. There's no question about it. The only time I've ever seen it happen decisively, I've talked about, was Matt Dillahunty versus Inspiring Philosophy. And anyone who doesn't think that Inspiring Philosophy won the debate, go read the comments. The comments are almost unanimous, except for the one freak show atheist who just won't own it. Everybody else is like, I can't believe the Christian is the one bringing all the evidence. I can't believe the Christian is the one with the solid arguments, evidence-based supporting arguments. What's going on? Inspiring Philosophy won that debate basically 100-3 because all of the evidence was on his side. The debates about the Bible over the most contested parts of the Bible, those are hard to win as a Christian. They're really hard to win. Some of those questions are really hard to answer. As far as I'm concerned, Josh's answer, I kind of paraphrased it poorly, but it's the real answer. I don't know. Why does it say this? I'm not really sure. I'm not certain. So that's my 2 cents on some of these debates. Some of the questions are perfectly legitimate, perfectly valid. Other times, an atheist or an anti-theist is just trying to scam you with these type of questions. And if I'm actually talking to someone one-on-one, I'll do a read on them. I'll try and game it out for myself and ferret out if they're asking me for real or if they're just asking me so they can bust my chops and here's a gotcha question. Okay, here's another one. If they're just playing gotcha with you, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. I mean, if you're in an actual debate, fine. You got to answer and you got to try and give a legitimate answer. But if you're actually conversing with someone and they start asking you some of these questions, try and figure out if they're asking you for real, like they're really struggling with this, or if they're just asking you to corner you and play gotcha with you. Because the second one is a total waste of time. Don't even waste your time talking to them. Because that's what happened to Stephen Sheen in the comment section. Now, I'm not saying Skylar did that to Stephen Sheen. Okay? But the other person talking to him did. He answered the question in a way that was perfectly legitimate, perfectly valid. And then the guy threw another question. Here. Okay, didn't gotcha with that. Here's another gotcha. Okay, now I gotcha. I swear to God, that's what happened. I swear. Josh's answer was perfectly valid. Somewhere along the line, it's actually the biblical answer. The biblical answer is this. Trust the Lord with all your heart. Cling not to your own understanding. All your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. That settles it. That actually settles it. And then a smart aleck anti-theist atheist is going to go, oh, so God's telling you not to think. It's not what that says. It says have peace. Have peace in your heart about the ways of God. We don't need to justify his ways before man. We don't need to justify every sentence in the Bible, or at least I don't feel like I do. I didn't write the Bible. So if someone comes along, tries asking me challenging questions about the Bible, I'll game them out. Are they asking me because they're really struggling with this and they really care? And by the way, atheists, just so you know, if you're really struggling with some of these things as real objections, stop. Stop. It's not a real objection. They are, as a whole, irrelevant to the proposition God exists, God does not exist. If you actually really care about the truth, don't waste your time with these intellectual parlor games. They're intellectual parlor games, period. Now, Skylar is particularly good at some of them, okay? But it is not a real victory. If he is beating a Christian in a debate where he is just posing challenging questions about the Bible or about this aspect of Christianity, that is not that complicated of a task. That is not a very high bar. So I would say don't worry about it. Answer to the best of your ability, then move on. If the person's not satisfied with the answer, whatever. That's how I roll. That's how I perceive it. So anyways, I'm not sure if that was crystal clear, but maybe it helps somebody somewhere. If I can only help somebody somewhere, then I'm okay. If I just reach that one person who's like, yeah, Anyways, that is all for now, kids. Mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen.